Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. What if Naruto had Pokemon Fem Nine Tails instead of Kurama? Movie. Naruto and the Kyuubi got on very well, in fact, so well, that they were the best of friends, and Kurama felt it was his duty to protect the one he was sealed within. Naruto returned the trust and friendship easily. But now they were in a fix. Of course, it was Naruto's stupidity to blame. What the hell, Kit? I thought you were the Rokudaime. I can't believe you seriously thought you were good enough at wind chakra to fly. No one can fly, Kurama yelled at the 26-year-old. The blonde-haired Hokage stopped screaming and put a hand on the back of his neck in embarrassment. Oops, he said sheepishly. They were still falling, but Kurama had a feeling the younger had completely forgot. An impossibility for someone to forget they are falling to their death with wind screaming in their ears and the cliff face blurring past them at amazing speed, but this was Naruto we're talking about. Kit, you're falling to death, remember? The Kyuubi interrupted his thought path. I know that, Naruto snapped. Kyuubi had an amused expression on his face inside the mindscape. So how you gonna pull us out of this one? He said with a deadpanned expression. I'm thinking about that, Naruto yelled at him, his voice unheard because of the wind flying past. Not that it mattered, Kurama was inside him after all. Kit, I don't think Ramen is going to help us in this situation, Kurama said with a snort. You never know, Naruto said cheekily. Then he remembered finally that he was falling to his death. Ah, he cried. Kurama muttered and growled inside his room. It hadn't been called a cage since Naruto had decided to refurbish it. Listen, Kit, there is a way I can get us out of this, the Kitsune said slowly. Why don't you tell me, before we are about to go splat? Naruto yelled. Because it uses a lot of chakra and there is a high possibility it won't work. Also, I don't think you'll like the outcome, Kurama replied. Well, I think it'll be better than falling to death, Naruto retorted. So you want me to do it? Kurama asked again. Yes, Naruto replied. Are you sure? Kurama checked. Yes, Naruto repeated impatiently. Are you absolute, Kami? Yes, I am sure, Naruto interrupted angrily. Brace yourself, Kit, the great Kyuubi said, and Naruto was enveloped in red chakra. Ooh, Kakashi jumped to his feet as he felt the flare of Kyuubi chakra and cursed. What the hell has he done this time? Kakashi growled and ran over to the cliff where Naruto had been previously. Shikamaru, Neji, Sakura, Sasuke, Lee and Guy caught up with him on the way. Was that the Kyuubi's chakra? Yeah, and a lot of it, Kakashi replied. You think he'll be okay? Sasuke asked. His voice was slightly muffled by the Anbu mask and his white captain's jacket was half shrugged on. He must have just came from training. This is troublesome, stated the Nara lazily. That damn idiot, what stupid thing has he done this time? Sakura growled. It is very unyouthful to cause Sakura-chan to worry, Lee stated with his eyebrows mashed together. The Hokage is very youthful. His youth contests with Lee's, Guy said with a blinding smile. There's a note over there, Neji stated as they made it into the clearing where the cliff was. Sasuke went and picked up the note and cursed. Read it, he said, and stuffed it in Shikamaru's hands. Troublesome, Shikamaru sighed and began to read it aloud. Dear Sakura-chan, bushy brows sensei, Kakashi sensei, lazy ass, Temen the fate-obsessed one, Neji scoffed. I am going to fly. Yes, I know, it's impossible, yar, but I am going to try it anyways. So if you are reading this, either I'm dead, or the fuzzball's done something. Probably the second one, because seriously, me, dying. Like that would happen. Yeah, so that's about it. I really don't have much to say. From the #1 most unpredictable ninja in the world, the Hokage. Shikamaru finished and looked carefully over the edge of the cliff. He's crazy. Well, obviously he knew we would be coming, Kakashi stated flatly. How did he know it was going to be us? Lee wondered. Also, how did he know what would happen in the future? Guy wondered, using the exact same tone as Lee. He's such an idiot, Sakura said as she hit a tree. The poor tree wasn't going to be doing any growing anytime soon. Neji, could you look over the edge? Sasuke asked suddenly. Neji nodded and, activating his bloodline, leaned warily over the edge. He almost toppled over before his sensei caught him. Can you see anything, Neji? Kakashi asked. Neji nodded his head. There's like a tear in the very universe itself, he said in reverence. Contact the cage. Sasuke ordered. Maybe Gaara can get Shukaku to tell us what happens here. Demons will be able to decipher better what has happened here than humans. Neji nodded and disappeared. I just hope he's going to be okay, Sasuke said as he looked down at the bottomless cliff. Hinata's going to be devastated, Sakura said mournfully. Ooh, Naruto opened an eye blearily and saw white. He groaned. I died, didn't I? He said mournfully. Sakura's gonna kill me. Sir, you're in a hospital, you're not dead, a voice said. Naruto rolled to the side and saw pink. He rubbed his eyes. A woman with pink hair holding a clipboard was looking at him kindly. You banged your head quite hard by the looks. Some trainers brought you in with your ninetails from the side of the road. They were extremely worried when you appeared to be unconscious, she said. Naruto sat straight up. Ninetails. Kurama, Naruto called. There was no answer and Naruto silently panicked. Then Kurama's voice came back to him. It uses a lot of chakra, that's what he'd said. I never realized it was so much that it had put him to sleep. Where am I anyway? Naruto thought. Where am I? Naruto asked the nurse. He was in a hospital, it made sense. You're in the Kanto region, sir. Cerulean City. What is your name? She asked. Naruto blinked. Kanto region. Cerulean City. What the hell did the fuzzball do? Send me to another universe. Namikaze Naruto. He replied. Sorry, what did you say about Ninetails? He asked. The nurse blinked. Oh, we're healing him. Don't worry, he should be fine by tomorrow morning. Oh, are you hungry? She asked when his stomach growled. He scratched the back of his neck sheepishly. He. Yeah, please can I have some food, miss? Nurse Joy. The nurse answered and smiled at him. Nurse Joy. Please can I have some food, Nurse Joy? Naruto asked. The nurse nodded. Of course. If you will please come this way, I can lead you to the cafeteria. I'm sure the trainers that brought you are extremely worried, she said with another smile. She smiles a lot, Naruto thought and followed her. She led him to a large room where many other people were. They all appeared to be civilians by their stances. None of them were in that ready stance of someone who was ready for an attack at any given moment. But he almost jumped when something yellow came and jumped at him. He did yell though. Gah, he yelled and whipped out a kunai. Wait, someone cried and a boy jumped forward and hugged the yellow thing protectively. Naruto blinked and then looked at the yellow thing properly. It appeared to be some sort of rodent with bright red cheeks and a lightning bolt tail. It looked at him cautiously. Sorry, but what the hell is that thing? He asked and pointed to the mouse-like creature. It's a Pikachu, the boy exclaimed with wide eyes. Have you never seen a Pikachu before? He said incredulously. Ash, leave the boy alone. He might have amnesia from the time he banged his head. Just because he didn't recognize Pikachu, he'll probably be able to recognize other Pokemon, the orange-haired girl next to the boy said, but Naruto interrupted her impatiently. What's Pokemon? He interrupted. Then he blinked. Did you say boy? He looked down at himself and cursed. Fuzzball. Why the hell am I deaged? He yelled and everyone looked at him like he was crazy. Yes boy, but how can you not know what Pokemon are? The older teenage boy with spiky brown hair asked with a frown. He must have hit his head really hard, said Ash. I'm fine. My name's Namikaze Naruto, and well, it seems I'm a 12-year-old, he said as he looked down at himself. He could already feel the need to train his body again. Should work on that, he muttered and then looked up as the others introduced themselves. I'm Ash Ketchum from Pallet Town. The boy with black hair replied with lots of enthusiasm. This kid reminds me of myself when I was younger, Naruto mused. I'm Misty. I specialize in water-type Pokemon, the orange head said with a smile. And I'm Brock and I'm a Pokemon breeder, Brock said with a grin. And this is Pikachu, Ash declared, and the Pokemon replied with hello. Naruto's sweat dropped. Nice to meet you, he said and then looked around. So mind explaining what Pokemon are? Brock instantly answered. A Pokemon are the name of the creatures who inhabit this world. They can be companions or used in battle, Brock explained. He pulled out a red and white orb and pressed the button. A red light flashed out and a fox-like creature appeared. It instantly jumped him. Fox. It cried and began to lick him. No, I'm not a fox. He cried and tried to push the creature of him. Alpha Fox. It cried and ignored his groan. Why does this always happens with foxes? He asked rhetorically, even though he knew the answer. Wait, do you understand Vulpix? Pikachu asked. Naruto tilted his head. Yeah, why? Is he speaking to the Pokemon? Misty asked curiously. Why, can't you? Naruto asked in confusion. They shook their heads. Naruto frowned. Then what do you hear? Them saying their own names. Brock answered. Naruto's sweat dropped. Sano growling just. Pikachu, and Vulpix. He said dryly. They nodded. Naruto shook his head. This place is weird, he said, and then his stomach grumbled. Ah, I need some ramen, he said, and then gaped at their questioning glance. Ramen. You know what ramen is, don't you? He said, panicked. They shook their heads. No, he cried loudly and began to sob hysterically. He might be the Rokudaime Hokage of Konoha, but without ramen, he was nothing. Little did he remember the sealing scroll in his pocket. Ooh. Gaara sat at his desk with his paperwork sighing. Temari sat tapping her fingers against the desk impatiently. Gaara placed down the paperwork with a sigh. Temari, can you please stop doing that? He asked in annoyance, and Temari instantly ceased her tapping. He relaxed slightly and began filling out the forms again. After 3 minutes there was a tapping again. Temari. Gaara growled in annoyance. It's not me, she said and pointed to the window. There was a messaging hawk with the Konoha headband strapped onto one wing. Message to Casecage from Hyuga Neji. The bird chirped. Must be a summon then. Very well. Relay it, Gaara said in a bored tone. The Hokage has gone missing and Hyuga-sama insists your presence in finding the missing man. The bird screeched. Gaara stood and then began to walk out the door. Temari, tell Kankuro to run Suna while I'm gone. You're coming with me. Naruto stirred his food in a thoughtful way. He seemed to be in another world. Kurama obviously seemed to be fast asleep as he hadn't answered any of Naruto's calls. Naruto decided that the travel had an impact on his body and had de-aged him. That annoyed Naruto, but there was really nothing he could do about it. Sighing heavily, he lifted the unfamiliar food to his mouth and chewed it slowly. He wasn't really tasting it. He wondered what was happening back at his home world. No doubt they'd found the letter. He'd had a hunch this would happen, and his hunches usually came out true. He'd never estimated being de-aged though. That was troublesome. Naruto shuddered slightly. Kami, my advisor's rubbing off on me, he thought mournfully. Next he'll be staring at clouds all day and exclaiming everything was a drag. Mr. Namikaze, came a voice, and Naruto looked up to see Nurse Joy looking over at him. A Chansey was following her. He'd skimmed through the Pokédex as soon as he'd learnt of Pokémon and had memorized as many as he could. Yes, he asked politely. Your Ninetales has returned to full health earlier than expected. Naruto nodded and followed her to Kurama, he supposed. I mean, a Ninetales just appearing out of the air with him. Has to be the fuzzball lay. The boy almost cracked up laughing at what Kurama looked like. He did snicker. Kurama growled. This is not funny, Kit. Kurama growled and Naruto snickered again. It so is, he replied, and then sat down next to the Kyuubi. I have a question though, why am I 12 again? He questioned. I believe that it is a slight side effect from the jutsu I used. You should probably age quickly back to your former age if we ever make it back to our world. The Ninetales answered. Okay then, but that makes me vulnerable here, he said with a pout. The Kyuubi gave him a deadpan stare. You do realize shinobi don't exist here, right? He asked. Naruto blinked. Oh, so that's why I haven't been interrogated yet. Naruto finally realized. Kurama raised a paw to his forehead. The only reason you've been alive so long is because of me, I swear. The fox said as he shook his head. Naruto looked over the Ninetales. His red fur was finished with black tips and his red eyes flashed. You're so tiny, Naruto said with a grin. There's also a problem that I don't look like a normal Pokemon. You'll have to use one of those Pokeballs to capture me before someone else tries. Kurama said with a flick of his tails. Naruto blinked and then nodded. Okay, hang on, I'll ask Nurse Joy. he said and then wandered back down to the reception room. Nurse Joy, I would like a Pokeball please. Naruto asked. The nurse blinked. I'm sorry, I don't have those. You can buy them at the Pokemon Mart, she said, and so Naruto asked where it was. It's the building with a blue roof. Nurse Joy explained and Naruto thanked her before walking out. There he bumped into Ash, Misty and Brock. Ah, hello, he said with a wave. Hi Naruto, Ash said cheerfully. Then he jumped up and down. Guess what? I got my gym badge, he exclaimed loudly. Good for you, Naruto said questionably. I've got to find the Pokemon Mart but I forgot what Nurse Joy said. Could you guys show me? He asked. Sure, Ash said and began to run off in a direction with Brock and Misty yelling for him to slow down. Naruto jogged easily in pace with him. Here it is, Ash exclaimed and Pikachu on his shoulder began to speak. Why you going here? He asked. Naruto grinned. I'm going to get a Pokeball, he explained. He walked inside with the other three following. One Pokeball please, he asked the shop owner. Your license? The man asked gruffly. Naruto scratched his head. License? Yeah, your Pokemon trainer license. You've got to be a Pokemon trainer to buy a Pokeball, the man explained. Naruto groaned. How do I become one of those? Naruto asked impatiently. You've got to go to Pallet Town and find Professor Oak. He'll register you as a Pokemon trainer, Brock behind him said. Naruto turned around. So where's this Pallet Town? He asked. That's my hometown, Ash exclaimed. I'll show you the way. But Ash, won't that put you behind Gary in your journey? Misty said worriedly. I think it would be a good idea. I don't like a patient with amnesia wandering through Vidarian Forest, Brock said gravely. All right, I'll go get Kurama and we can go, Naruto said with a grin and ran off to the Pokemon Center. Ooh, what is this about Naruto disappearing? Gaara said as he appeared in Konoha. He'd come as fast as he could and now was at the site where Naruto had disappeared. It had taken him less than 1 day to get here. We were wondering if you could ask Shukaku what happened here. Since the Ikibi was resealed into you once Madara was defeated, we thought you would be able to ask him what he knows about tears in the Univers fabric, Sasuke explained. Gaara could see he was extremely worried for his best friend. Okay, hang on, Gaara instructed and closed his eyes. Shukaku, what is it boy? I'm sure you heard the conversation. Do you know about this universe tearing? There was a pause before the raccoon dog answered. Yes, I do. I would be able to retrieve Kurama and his kit, though it would take at least 5 days to prepare and will use a lot of chakra. The Ikibi replied. Shukaku can retrieve Naruto but it will take 5 days, Gaara said. The others relaxed visibly and began to set to work. Ooh, Naruto walked with Kurama at his side through Mt. Moon Cave. Misty, Brock, Ash and Pikachu were a little ahead of him and were speaking about Ash getting his next gym badge. Ash had explained to him a while ago about this Pokemon Master business. It made Naruto chuckle to think that he'd been the same way about becoming Hokage. This kid would definitely get there someday. Wah! Misty cried as a mushroom bug Pokemon also known as Paris scuttled into view. Ash pointed to it speaking really fast about something that Naruto didn't quite catch while Pikachu on his shoulder had a sweat drop appear on its forehead. He does this when he meets someone new to show he is a good trainer, the Pokemon said with a sigh. Kurama grinned foxily. Sounds like some idiot I know. Hey, Naruto said and glared at Kurama who stared innocently back. I never said it was you, he stated simply and Naruto scowled at him. I know you were talking about me. He glowered, unaware of the looks he was getting. So you think of yourself as stupid? Otherwise I don't see why you would think it was you, Kurama said with his red eyes flashing in amusement. Naruto's scowl deepened and he opened his mouth to protest before. You can talk to Pokemon can't you? Brock said with wide eyes. Well, as wide as lines can get anyway. Naruto cocked his head. Yeah. Brock's eyes suddenly morphed into love hearts to Naruto's horror. That did not look right on a male and he clasped Naruto's hands. You must teach me Naruto. With your help I could become the ultimate Pokemon breeder and women would flock to me from all over the world for advice. On what? How to get a pervert to let go off your hands. Naruto said dryly and pried Brock's fingers out of his own before continuing to walk with the chuckling Kyuubi at his side. Shut it fuzzball, Naruto ordered, and the Kurama growled at him slightly before listening for once. They saw several other Pokemon which surprised Naruto. Of course, he could always hear them, but he never thought they'd be brave enough to venture out and stare openly at the ragtag group. "Ma, are we there yet?" Naruto asked as he flicked through the Pokédex in book form. He was in a very Kakashi-like pose with book in one hand and the other in pocket while slouching slightly as if completely relaxed while actually totally on guard. His forehead protector had dropped and was now resting over one eye. All he was missing was the mask. "Yeah, I see the exit up ahead," Ash said excitedly and pointed to it. Naruto chuckled at the younger boy's antics. He was younger, even if Naruto had been de-aged. The last time Naruto checked, 12 was older than 10. But of course, that never included his actual age. They reached the exit and there was a loud bang and smoke burst out from the trees. "Prepare for trouble," a female voice came. "And make it double," a male's followed. "To protect the world from devastation," the female continued. "To unite all people within our nation," the male chanted. "To denounce the evil of truth and love," the female declared. "To extend our reach to the stars above," the male said and struck a pose. "Jesse," the red-haired woman cried. "James," the purple-haired man exclaimed. "Meowth," the cat creature yelled. Team Rocket blasting off at the speed of light. The woman carried on. "Be prepared to fight, fight, fight," the purple man finished. "Team Rocket," the three twerps cried, and Naruto raised an eyebrow. If they were to go into drama business they would get a hell of a lot of money. Of course, because of their obviously low amount of wits they would never even consider the idea if one would offer it to them. "We've come to take Pikachu," Jesse cried. "Meowth, look at that," Meowth said and pointed to Kurama. Kurama yawned and Naruto's sweat dropped. "That's a special Ninetales, Meowth. Never seen one like that before. Just imagine the boss's face." He drifted off and began bubbling excitedly to his two partners in crime about his daydream. Naruto sighed and carried on walking with Kurama trailing behind him. "Hey wait, where are you going?" Jesse cried. Obviously they had just realized though he was already almost out of sight on the path. They quickly ran up to catch him with Ash, Misty, Brock and Pikachu following. "Ma, you guys are a waste of my time," he said and waved a hand back at them lazily. "Hot," Jessie screamed and her head seemed to grow insanely bigger to Naruto's amusement. "You dare say that I, the beautiful and powerful Jessie am a waster of your time? I think it is the other way round," she screamed at the top of her lungs. Naruto shrugged. "If that's the case then why are you following me?" "Because though you are a waste of our time that Ninetales is not," James said with a nasty grin. Naruto rolled his eyes down to Kurama. "Can you be bothered with this?" "Not in the slightest." "Well let's keep going then," he said and waved goodbye to the stunned criminals. Ash, Misty, Brock and Pikachu finally caught up. "What, Huff, did you do, Huff, to Team Rocket?" Misty panted. "They looked like they'd been stunned." Ash said perfectly energized. "I just told them they weren't worth my time," he said dismissively. "That, Huff, worked," Brock said incredulously. Naruto quirked an eyebrow. Why wouldn't it? "Because," they all started and then trailed off when they realized they had no reason why that wouldn't work. "Wow, how could they not spot that?" Kurama said with amusement. Naruto chuckled at Pikachu's glower. "Ooh, what is that?" Naruto asked and pointed at the bird Pokemon. "A Pidgey," Misty answered. "What's that?" Naruto asked and pointed to another Pokemon. "A Pidgey," Misty said irritably. "Wah, shut the hell up. They all are Pidgeys," Misty yelled and the flock of Pidgey became startled and dispersed. Naruto was really getting bored. Not just bored like really bored. He'd never get bored with paperwork because he made the clones do it. That's what clones were for. So he decided he might as well have a little fun with them. "So, you think if I climb that tree I will be able to see the next town?" Naruto asked. The tree was, in Naruto's opinion, as well as anyone with eyes, way taller than the rest of the trees around here. It was almost as tall as the trees in Konoha. "Well sure but, hey," she cried as he began to walk over to the tree. "You aren't thinking about climbing that are you?" Ash asked and worry showed on his face. Naruto cocked his head. "Yeah, I climb trees all the time," he said with a sly grin. Then he put his hands on the tree and began to climb up like Spider-Man. "Get down, you idiot," Misty yelled at him. "Be careful, Naruto," Brock called worriedly. Naruto grinned and made it up to the top and sat on the first branch he came across. "Aha, there it is," he exclaimed and pointed to the far-off Vidirian city. He began to jump up and down on the branch. "Yay, we're so close," he cried childishly. Then he put his foot perfectly forward slightly and fell off the edge. He heard Misty scream and the two boys yell. Pikachu cried out and Kurama yawned. Figures, Naruto thought with annoyance that he wasn't reacting to his death. He sighed and planted his foot on the trunk of the tree, enforcing it with chakra. He stopped still and then calmly walked down the tree and down to where the others, excluding the Ninetales, stood with their mouths agape. "You know it's rude to stare," he said from behind them, and they all jumped and whipped around. "But you were, they all stuttered as they whipped their heads back and forth from where his clone used to be and where he was now. He cocked an eyebrow. "I was, never mind," they all muttered and then carried on walking. He chuckled softly and noticed that Pikachu's ears twitched at the sound and the Pokémon looked back at him curiously. He waved. This was going to be such a fun time. "Wah!" Misty yelled as another bug Pokémon appeared in front of her. Naruto calmly knocked it out of his way as he continued to walk. Brock had noticed something. Ever since Naruto had begun traveling with them, a lot more Pokémon had turned up. He wasn't sure if the others had noticed, but it was something a Pokémon breeder like himself would never miss. After all, a Pokémon breeder has to understand a Pokémon to help it grow. Brock could tell something was different about Naruto. Something outwardishly different. He sighed and held up a hand to stop them from moving. "We should stop," he declared. Naruto pouted slightly before sitting down. Suddenly a steaming cup of noodles was in his hands and he was eating away happily. Brock gaped before he controlled himself and began setting up for the others' dinner. "We've made it a really long way," Ash said excitedly. "I'm sure it took us twice as long to get to Cerulean than it did to come back here." Naruto rolled his eyes. "Ash, we walked downhill the whole way. You would have had to stop from exhaustion on your way there, but since we were walking downhill, not only did we cover a lot of ground, we did it without much effort either," he said somehow as he continued to inhale ramen. "Ma, oishi ne," he murmured. Brock raised an eyebrow. It was incredible that Naruto found that strange, fattening food delicious. Even though Brock had no experience with ramen, it sure looks fattening. He watched surprised as Naruto glared at him and pointed an accusing finger. "You are thinking bad of ramen, aren't you?" Brock was taken aback. How had he? My ramen senses were tingling. Naruto declared loudly. Everyone's sweat dropped as he continued on. "Ramen is food given directly by Kami himself. How dare you revile the most heavenly of foods? Be ashamed of yourself, civilian," he yelled and then continued eating his ramen as if nothing had happened. The Ninetales that Naruto addressed as Kurama shook its head before flicking its tails. "Ooh, Ma, are we there yet?" Naruto asked with the book up to his nose. His two blue eyes were glued to the book, but Misty was sure he was taking in every happening going on around them. Mostly because he hadn't tripped once as they walked through the long grass. Suddenly a blue light appeared in front of them and Misty found herself staring at none other than an Abra. The Abra stared at them all before staring at Naruto and tackling him to the ground. Naruto growled loudly. "Every single fox-like Pokémon is going to do this, isn't it?" he snarled in annoyance. "I'm sorry, son," came an old voice. They looked up to see none other than Professor Oak running up to them. Naruto smiled and tried to pry the clingy Abra off him. "It's all right, old man," he assured him and passed him the Abra, who was now trying to latch itself onto his arm now that it could no longer reach his body. "Professor," Oak chuckled. "That Abra sure does like you," he said with a good-naturedly smile. Misty looked at the Abra's sad eyes as Professor Oak took it away from Naruto. "This Abra has just been caught by my grandson," Professor Oak said proudly. Then his eyes brightened. "Oh Ash, I must show you an amazing discovery one of my colleagues' men have found." Ash looked extremely excited and Misty was too, but she wasn't going to forget the reason they came here. "Ah, Professor, Naruto here wants to become a Pokémon trainer," she said and gestured to Naruto, who was waved his hand lazily. Professor Oak blinked before a wide smile split his face. "That is wonderful. Come in, come in. Let's get you started on your journey right away. Ooh, Naruto eyed the egg with interest that stood on the stand. He heard a faint voice and moved closer. Intrigued as it called to him, he carefully picked up the egg and placed it to his ear. The others watched him curiously before he yelled in pain. What the hell? He yelled and they saw why he was yelling. A small fox-like creature had its fangs clamped onto his ear. Its head had poked out of the egg and its eyes flashed broodingly. Then all the other eggs, 5 others, in the nursery began to wiggle and crack before Naruto was dog-piled. Or more like fox-piled. MMMPHM. He tried to yell but the fur got into his mouth. Mama. The fox Pokemon all chanted. They were almost all exactly identical but they had slightly different looks. The one that had bitten onto his ear had a tuft of fur on the back of his head that looked exactly like Sasuke's own duck butt style. His onyx eyes stared at him with a slightly brooding look through his very dark fur. Another fox, with a bright pink tinge to her fur and emerald green eyes sparkling as she swooned over the brooding fox. One of the foxes had a lazy look on his face that said he'd rather be sitting outside watching the clouds than doing something like clambering on his new mama, as it was much too troublesome. He had somehow managed to acquire a band in his fur on his head which tied up his loose hair into the shape of a pineapple. Another fox had a bluish tinge to her fur and pale white eyes. She nervously brushed up against his fingers and licked them. Another one had a strange bowler haircut. Thankfully he did not have bushy eyebrows so it actually looked quite cute. He tried to gain the pinkish fox's attention to no avail. The last fox freaked Naruto out the most. It was almost as standoffish as the brooding fox. But that wasn't what freaked him out. Oh no, it was the freakishly white fur and the mask the fox had somehow managed to acquire. Where the hell had the mask come from? That was unexpected. Misty managed to utter, "Eevees." "Professor," Oak exclaimed. "They were Eevee eggs," he said and danced around with excitement. But then he frowned. I can't keep them but I can't abandon them." Naruto tried to scramble away from the Eevee crowd when they all jumped on him again, except the lazy one that mumbled some baby talk that somehow managed to still sound like troublesome to Naruto's ears. "So Naruto, since they like you so much, you can take care of them. I'll grant you a Pokemon license," he said with a grin at Naruto's exasperated look. "You are now officially a Pokemon trainer." Ooh. The Eevee gang stumbled around Naruto, excluding the lazy one which lagged behind. Kurama, who had been waiting outside with Pikachu, began to laugh endlessly at the sight of the Eevees. It was impossible not for Kurama to laugh. Naruto glared at the fox which continued to roll on the ground laughing. "Shut the hell up, fuzzball," Naruto roared. Kurama just kept on laughing. His laughter only increased in volume as one fox, the bowler cut one, chanted "Mama." And the followed with 5 other choruses of "Mama." Naruto snatched one of the Pokeballs from Professor Oak's hand and threw it at the Kyuubi. He disappeared and the Pokeball beeped instantly. Naruto sighed in relief until a red light came out of it and Kurama's loud booming laugh filled the garden again. Naruto growled again and all his E-babies crowded behind him. The broody one and masked one growled cutely too. This caused Kurama to laugh even louder and Naruto, getting absolutely sick of it, returned Kurama again. Thankfully he stayed in, yet his booming laugh was still ringing in his ears. "Stupid fuzzball. Been teasing me all my life and now trying to make me go deaf," he muttered under his breath and glowered at the offending ball. Well, it wasn't really the ball's fault, but no way in hell was he letting Kurama out again just to glower at him. "You'll need to capture the Eevees too, Professor," Oak said after he cleared his throat to get everyone's attention. He held 2 earplugs in his ears and looked cheerful. "Lucky bastard." Naruto sighed and held out a hand. "Professor." Oak placed them in his hand and Naruto put one of the E-babies in each of them. Once they'd been captured they burst out again and once again swamped him. "Maybe I should name them," he said and then turned to them all. "Sasuke," he said and pointed to the brooding one. "Sakura," he said to the pink one. "Shikamaru and Lee," he said and pointed to the lazy pineapple and the bowler cut. "Hinata," he said and smiled at the pale-eyed one who blushed and mewed quietly. And he shuddered slightly, "Kakashi." The masked one just stared at him. "I like those names," Brock said with a smile. Everyone nodded and the E-babies just stared at each other before mewing to their mama. Naruto groaned. Okay Naruto, why don't you go and stay with Ash at his mother's? Misty and Brock are staying there too. Naruto nodded and then scooped up his S in his arms before walking out after the others with Pokédex in his back pocket. Ooh, oh Ash, are these your friends? Ash's mother asked as she looked over the three others. Naruto felt her gaze linger on him and his 6 kits before letting them in. Naruto walked in and sat on the floor. The S were fast asleep. Naruto smiled softly as Sakura tried to put a paw on Sasuke, who pushed it away. Kakashi was right between Hinata and Sakura, which Naruto found very disturbing. He looked up as a blanket was thrown over him and Kitsun saw Ash's mother smiling down at him. Thank you, he whispered before he too fell asleep. Naruto groaned as he woke up to something fluffy inside his mouth. He said and spat out the tail. Shikamaru looked at him lazily before flicking his tail away from Naruto's face. He's as smart as who he's named after. This is freaky, Naruto thought and pushed himself up. He instantly regretted it as he was pummeled to the ground again in a flurry of fur. Mama! They all cried and began bubbling in baby language. Naruto scooped them up as their tummies rumbled and began to search for Brock. Pokemon breeder right, he'd know what to do. Ooh, I have no idea what to do. Brock stated outright. Naruto groaned slightly and the S nuzzled into him comfortingly. Your Eevees are very strange. And I never knew Pokemon came from eggs until yesterday. Your best bet is to talk to that colleague of the professor. He said as he cooked. So that was where he went. Professor Oak helped him get them to try every Pokemon food imaginable but to no avail. He sighed and decided that he'd find out how to talk to the colleague after he ate. He unsealed his ramen from the scroll in his pocket, thanked Kami he had remembered he had it after a while, and put the chopsticks up to his mouth before Sasuke had snatched the bowl from his hands and was eating it hungrily. Naruto gaped but quickly thinking, unsealed 5 other bowls and handed it to the other Eevees. They dug into it with delight. He unsealed another for himself and began to eat. Naruto's kits had quickly learnt 8 words. The first word was, Mama, the second was, Ramen, and the other 6 were their own and each other's names. You would now see, Sake, trying to push away, Sakura, while, Hinata, watched nervously as, Shika, and, Kaka, stared at each other. Lee was the only one who managed to get his name right and the others to say it correctly. Also the fact that Shikamaru had been shortened to Shika and Kakashi to Kaka as well as Sasuke to Naruto sniggered. Sake led question to why wasn't Hinata and Sakura also shortened. The 6 never left him alone and followed him around everywhere. Kurama had stopped laughing sometime past lunchtime on the 3rd day and had been let out. This had led to another word being learnt by all the kits. Fuzzy. Lee yelled and tackled the strongest of the tailed beasts to the ground. He was then fox-piled by the other 5. Naruto thought amusedly how well that would work as a technique should they ever go back to the ninja world. The named, Fuzzy, was struggling to stick his snout out so he could breathe fresh air. Kit, 6 ears twitched. Kurama growled slightly and decided to change nickname. I call you Naruto if you call me Kurama, he said with a slight snarl. Naruto smirked but nodded. Deal. Naruto's kits then jumped over to their mum. Ramen, 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 ramen. Naruto grinned and thanked his awesome sealing scroll that contained never-ending ramen. Ooh, Naruto turned to see Ash training Pikachu outside. Whatcha doing? He asked Ash. Ash grinned. Me and Pikachu. Pikachu and I. Naruto corrected and his eyes widened at what he'd just done. Ash snorted. You're definitely a mum all right, he muttered before clearing his throat. Pikachu and I are training, he explained. Oh GHT. Pokemon can be used for battles nay. Ash nodded. Naruto grinned. Okay I wanna try, he said and then cupped his hands. Kurama. A loud growl was heard as well as several high-pitched yelps and the 6 Eevees came and jumped into Naruto's awaiting arms. Yes Naruto, Kurama said tiredly. His ears had been pulled and his tails made chew toys and he was really in the mood to snap something. We're going to have a battle. Kurama perked up. Finally. Me versus you, he said excitedly. Naruto shook his head and pointed to Pikachu and Ash. Gonna battle them, he said. Kurama instantly let his ears droop. Ah but this will be too easy. You don't know until you try. I'm sure me and Ash will beat you. Pikachu declared loudly. My Pikachu's level 20. We'll beat you for sure. Ash yelled. Naruto cocked his head to the side. Levels, he said questionably. Yeah, I'll explain after the battle. Go Pikachu, he cried. Pikachu ran forward and growled cutely. This caused a trigger reaction and the kits growled back at him. Kurama sighed and walked forward. He sat on his haunches and stared at the Pikachu. Begin, Ash declared and then named his first move. Pikachu used Quick Attack. Pikachu began to charge at what would seem like a really fast speed, but to Naruto and Kurama it was like a jog. Kurama sidestepped and Pikachu banged into the tree behind him. Thunderbolt. Pikachu began to charge up its electricity before it let go of the attack. It whizzed over to hit Kurama, who caught it with chakra-enhanced tails. The lightning that was on his tail morphed slightly until it was black and then Kurama pointed it at Pikachu. Demonic lightning, Naruto stated, and the lightning flashed across the area and hit Pikachu squarely in the chest. Pikachu fainted instantly. Pikachu, Ash cried and hugged his Pokemon to his chest protectively. You're really strong, he said to Kurama, who shrugged his foxy shoulders. Well, let's head back to Professor Oak so he can heal Pikachu. What's this level business? Naruto asked. Ooh, it's impossible, I tell you. Professor Oak declared as he looked at the machine. Impossible. The machine that checked a Pokemon's stats was coming up with something that was impossible. The Ninetales that Naruto owned was level 1000. He would have been surprised if Ninetales was level 100, but 1000 was just insane. Ash looked happy though. So Pikachu is strong. Kurama is just some impossibly strong guy. Ash said cheerfully. You could go through the league with just that one Pokemon. Oak spluttered. It defies all logic. Pokemon can only go up to level 100. Naruto shrugged as if he was unsurprised. Pikachu spoke to Naruto, who answered. Yeah, I train with Kurama. Haven't done much training since I hit my head. Hey Kurama, you wanna go train? He asked his Pokemon, which nodded. You don't need to train him. He's level 1000. Oak yelled in frustration. This was beyond belief. I'm not going to train him. He's going to help me train myself. He emphasized the two words. Oak frowned. Why would you need to train yourself? Naruto chuckled and shrugged. I need to stay fit, he said, and walked outside with his 7 Pokemon following. Ooh, mama, 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 mama. The 6 Eevees chanted as Naruto stood ready on the opposite side of the field to Kurama. Kurama flexed his tails while Naruto cracked his knuckles. Oak, Ash, Misty, Brock and Pikachu were standing next to the 6 Eevees. Begin, Brock declared. He wasn't sure what to do. It would be dangerous for a human to fight a Pokemon. This instantly changed in everyone's minds as they saw what Naruto did next. All of a sudden hundreds of Narutos filled the area. They gaped as they all ran at the Ninetales. Naruto had learned how to do Cage Bunshin without seals. In fact, he'd learned how to do everything without seals. The clones tackled Kurama, but as soon as they made contact with him they immediately dissipated. So he'd coated himself in demonic chakra. Two could play at that game. Look at Naruto, Misty whispered as the one Naruto left closed his eyes. When they opened his eyes they gasped. His eyes were slit-red and bright crimson. 9 fiery tails came out from behind him, which swung around him dangerously. Kurama bared his teeth in a smile and lunged. Ooh, when Ninetales lunged was when the humans lost sight of the battle in front of them. The Pokemon, however, with their sharp eyes watched in awe as they fought. The air filled with loud booms every time the two made contact. Finally a fiery attack assaulted the air, but it was cancelled out by a water one. Where'd the water Pokemon come from? Misty asked. Then she saw Naruto had stopped and was waving his hands with the water following his move. The Ninetales threw its head around as it directed the flames. The flames dispersed and the Ninetales growled before a large ball of black energy began to form in its opened mouth. Naruto grinned and they watched as an identical ball appeared in Naruto's hand. The two ran at each other, and then when the two balls collided the earth shook. There was a large smoke cloud and everyone coughed and saw when the smoke cleared that Naruto was panting heavily. The Ninetales grinned, but his shoulders moved up and down as if he was panting too. I give in so we don't destroy the town, Naruto said tiredly and slumped on the grass. His S came and jumped on him and began licking at the scratches he'd acquired. Misty noticed however that all his wounds were already healed. What are you? Brock asked, his eyes as wide as they could go, his ones at least. Naruto chuckled. Okay, I'll admit it. I'm not entirely human, he said with a fanged grin. His slit eyes were so animalistic looking that they instantly believed him. You could say it was an experiment, he said slowly. I've been like this since I was a kid. He gestured to Kurama, who yawned. DNA was crossed with mine and so I gained some Pokemon traits. He's a special Pokemon, so they decided to use him, he explained. They nodded their heads slowly. Such things had been done in the past. The only difference was no one ever succeeded and came out alive. It doesn't come without risk though, Naruto said warningly. Many people have tried to kill me, and when people try to kill me, my Pokemon genes take over, he said slowly, and they shuddered. If this was him in control, they did not want to see him wild. Naruto grinned and his tails disappeared, as well as his fangs. His eyes faded back to normal and he smiled down at his Eevees. Who wants ramen? He asked, and several Eevees were replied. Naruto smiled and scooped them up and walked back to Ash's place. Ooh, so you've gained your memory back? Brock asked as Naruto sat down at the table with Kurama at his side. They'd long ago given up on trying to get Kurama to eat with the other Pokemon. Naruto had translated dryly that if they didn't treat him like any other human he'd blow up the town. He'd also added his own comment and said it wouldn't be the first time. Naruto nodded his head slowly as he inhaled the ramen. Kurama just shook his head and ate his own ramen gracefully. Yeah, I come from a different region than Kanto though, now I remember. But I can't remember what it was called, he said with a sad face. He brightened again. But I do remember the people there, he said excitedly. A diff MMN region MN. Ash said through his food and was immediately received a slapped hand from his mother for talking with his mouth full. Naruto nodded. Yeah, a different region. But anyways, isn't it time that you guys carried on traveling? I'd like to explore with you guys if that's alright. Ash nodded his head excitedly. Yeah, and I'll become so strong that one day I'll defeat Kurama, he said and pointed to Kurama, who snorted. So how old are you, Naruto? Ash's mother asked. 26. He said with a shrug of his shoulders. You're older than me, Brock spluttered. That was unbelievable, he looked so young. Something happened when I hit my head and I found myself de-aged, he explained. Oh, so that's why you yelled out you'd been de-aged. I thought you were just disorientated mentally from hitting your head, Misty exclaimed. Pikachu commented and Naruto chuckled. True. It seems highly unlikely, but it's true. I don't even know how I ended up in this region, to tell the truth. Kurama's teleport gone wrong. He grinned wryly. Kurama snorted into his food and his ear twitched before he continued eating. The Eevees on the floor ran around the table since they'd finished their own ramen as quickly as Naruto. He sighed. Kits, sit still please. They blinked at him owlishly before sitting down obediently. Did your mother treat you like this? Ash's mother asked. Naruto's smile faded. I never knew my mother, he said softly. Well, I never knew my dad. Tell me, what's a dad like? Ash exclaimed. Naruto smiled softly. I never knew my dad either. Not personally anyways. He was one of the elites before he died, he said, proud shining in his voice. I'm sorry, how'd they die? Misty asked. Naruto sighed. They died on the day of my birth, protecting my hometown when Kurama attacked, he explained. They all looked at Kurama with wide eyes, who was staring at the food broodingly. But Kurama was under someone else's control, you see, not his own free will. So I forgive him, he said with a smile and stroked Kurama's head once, which earned him a slight growl. He did, after all, keep me company when everyone else hated me, he said with a smile. Why would everyone else hate you? You're so cool, Ash exclaimed. It was because of the experiment they hated you, wasn't it? Brock murmured. They hated you because you had a part of the thing that wrecked their town inside of you. Naruto nodded his head. That's exactly what happened. So I was abandoned and treated poorly. But then when I turned 12, I met 3 people who changed my life forever, he said with a blinding smile. My best friends and my mentor, Sasuke, Sakura and Kakashi. The three Eevees named after them perked up at the sound of their names and walked over to Naruto and began to nuzzle into him. It still slightly creeped Naruto out the thought of Kakashi nuzzling into him. Brock murmured before everyone carried on eating. Naruto was quite proud of himself for the story he'd come up with. It explained why he wouldn't know anything of this region, his demonic powers and his ability to speak with Pokemon. His hit to the forehead explained the reason he couldn't remember certain things those first few days too. The ninja found himself contemplating what he could do to pass his boredom once again as the team traveled through Vidirian Forest. He could tell kits were bored as well. Naruto thought it was time to introduce them to wonder of pranking. Naruto coughed. "Kits, come this way, I need to speak with you about a very serious matter," he said in a grave voice. The kits looked at each other before following him into one of the bushes. Once they were far enough away, Naruto created several clones that looked like them and sent them back to impersonate. Now no one would have any ideas about trying to overhear the conversation. "Now, my dear kits, I am going to teach you a very delicate and misunderstood art," he began, and the kits were standing in attention. This art is known by many and the majority look down on the art, not understanding how much delicacy, time and care that has been placed into creating the finesse, Naruto said with sad face. He understood how Deidara felt sometimes when everyone didn't appreciate your hard work and skills. This art gives the artist one of the most precious gift, laughter. Lafwa, the Eevee echoed questionably. The kits had picked up words quite quickly, but they were still obviously only toddlers. "Oh yes," Naruto said seriously as he kneeled next to them. "It is a gift that people do not realize how strong and wonderful it truly is. So do you wish to learn this art?" The Eevee looked at each other before nodding. Naruto grinned and began to explain the Eevee's first prank. Kurama was wondering what on this other world Naruto was doing when he replaced himself with a clone. Apparently the Pika Brat was wondering the same thing. The Pika Brat glanced over at Kurama, who shrugged. "I neither know nor care," he stated dully, and so he turned around to face the right way on his Gaki's shoulder. About 15 minutes later the six returned and Naruto's face was emotionally blank. Crap, Kurama knew what that meant. The Kyuubi quickly put as much distance between him and the six as he could while appearing not to have noticed any difference. Naruto's fingers twitched to their kunai holster, but he did nothing. Kurama let out a sigh of relief. It began. The 5 Eevee jumped as one and placed explosive tags on the 3 humans and the Pika Brat. Kurama dodged one attempt made at him and shoved himself back 50 meters. The explosive tags exploded on the startled humans. They exploded neon-colored paint. Kurama grinned and then looked down at his feet and frowned. Now why on earth would there be an X on the ground? "One Fausa Yao Pai no Jutsu," cried a voice from below him. Kurama mentally berated himself as he howled in pain at the jab. There wasn't 5 Eevee, there was 6. Why on earth could he not count when it mattered? Kurama landed on his butt right in front of the mastermind. Naruto grinned happily and stuck a seal on him. Then he waved and danced behind a tree to avoid the coming paint explosion. Namikaze Naruto traveled with 2 disgruntled teenagers, an annoyed demon, a cross Pikachu and a hyped-up Ash. Apparently Ash had absolutely loved pranks when he was little. He found the fact that him and his 2 friends were changing from neon orange to neon green to neon pink hilarious. The neon pink Pikachu was not as amused. Pikachu had worked hard to stop Ash from doing pranks. It had taken him days to find and confiscate all his pranking material. Now Naruto had just handed Ash even more than he had owned in the first place. The neon green Brock was thinking about unhygienic it would be for him to cook with this on. Who knew what was in it? The neon orange Misty was too busy yelling at Naruto. The neon pink Kurama was wondering how on earth Naruto had roped his kits into doing this. With huge grins on their faces no less. But the Ninetales was quite amused at the conversation that was happening in front of him. "Naruto, look at this. I'm all covered in paint. Do you know how hard paint is to get out of clothes?" Misty exclaimed. "Oh yes," Naruto said and nodded his head sagely, "I do know perfectly well. It has been on my clothes before, as you can imagine. Besides staining, it smells like tomatoes. I don't like tomatoes, and it just does not go with my outfit," she continued, completely ignoring Naruto, who was conversing with her cheerfully. I for one think that it does go with your outfit. It matches your hair after all, Naruto said with a foxy grin. Then he frowned thoughtfully. As for tomatoes, it was Sasuke's idea. He said since they couldn't do ramen-flavored paint we should do tomato-flavored. So naturally, the paint is made up out of colored ketchup mixed with some Pokemon can eat this paint for the effect. I bought the paint when we went to the Vidarian Mart. I didn't see him buy the paint, Brock mumbled as he watched himself change pink. He hadn't seen paint to this either. Awesome, Ash crowed. Pikachu forgot his earlier annoyance and began licking the ketchup happily. You can wash it off in a stream later anyways, Naruto said with a shrug. When they found a stream they decided they would set up camp for the night seeing as they had to wash out their clothes as well. Naruto went off to train while the others sat eating their respective meals. Kurama didn't even bother looking up when a loud boom echoed through the area. Later that night an ash-covered Naruto returned and fell into his sleeping bag. Kurama rolled his eyes and fell asleep. Ooh. Kurama watched as Naruto placed a genjutsu on Misty's sleeping bag as they packed up with a slight sigh. Now let's look at the map, Brock said as he pulled it out. They were halfway through the maze of the forest. That way takes too long, Naruto said in annoyance. Well, what do you propose we do then? Misty snapped in annoyance, still miffed at the Hokage about the prank. I found a shortcut, Naruto said happily, and they began to follow him as he walked directly to where he had trained last night. A pathway in ash led directly from the beginning of the Vidarian forest to the end of the Vidarian forest. Let me make a guess of what happened, Kurama started and Naruto shifted sheepishly under his dry tone. You were working on some sort of long-range fire jutsu that goes directly in a straight line but forgot you were in a forest. Then you panicked and used a water jutsu to put the fire out. The ground looked a bit dusty, so to clean up after yourself you used a wind jutsu to clear up the mess. The trees were practically just ash in the form of a tree, and so when the wind touched them they just exploded into ash and created this pathway, Kurama finished and let out a breath. Wow, that's pretty accurate. In fact, it is completely accurate, Naruto managed to say after he recovered from his shock. How exactly did you do that? I thought up the most craziest and unpredictable thing and then just used a cross between the two. Oh, and added a few jutsu to the mix, Kurama added thoughtfully. Naruto scowled and shoved him in the shoulder. The two could feel the three pairs of eyes on them but utterly ignored them. Up in the trees, a burnt and ash-covered Team Rocket were glaring at Naruto and Kurama. How can we catch that special Ninetales? Jesse said with a thinking face. James's stomach growled hungrily. My stomach is making it hard for me to think about anything else, James said mournfully. Meowth jumped to his feet. Meowth, that's it, he said and jumped up and down in glee. Too bad he had forgotten he was currently balancing on a branch with two others. The branch snapped and Team Rocket fell onto the ground. Is everyone all right? James said dazedly as he clutched his spinning head. No, Jessie squeaked as she stared at the swarm of angry Beedrill surrounding them. They had landed on the Beedrill's nest. The two and their talking Pokemon gulped. Ooh, I challenge you, a man yelled as he pointed a gloved finger at Naruto. Not interested, Naruto snapped in a distracted tone. This had been happening ever since they had stepped out of Vidarian Forest. It was like people were looking for him or something. Why does this keep happening? Naruto asked Brock as they made their way to Pewter City. I think it is because of Professor Oak scanning Kurama, Brock hypothesized. It would make sense, I mean, with your trainer ID comes all the levels of the Pokemon you have. I think it has your location too, but that part is changeable. Where do we get this changed? Naruto asked urgently. All the people challenging him were making his shinobi reflexes try to kick in. He really didn't want to be the person charged for a massacre. You should be able to do it at the local Pokemon Center, Brock said with a grin. How do you know this? Naruto asked him in confusion. Misty and I are gym leaders, we have to know everything about everything, Brock said with a twitch to his lips. So like a gym leaders I know everything skills. Maybe I could become one of those, Naruto murmured as he thought about it. As much as he missed home, he knew he couldn't come home until his Eevee babies could protect themselves. It was too dangerous for a normal ninja, but for him it would be killing them instantly. Sasuke would be a good Hokage and would no doubt be relieved when Naruto came back in 5 years or so. That paperwork was sent directly from hell, ask any Cage. Being a gym leader would give Naruto something else to do. Gym leaders usually focus on one type of Pokemon, but there are some, such as Bruno and Agatha of the Elite Four, who specialize in two types. So really, I guess you can do whatever you want, Brock said with a shrug. Naruto blinked. Wait, how did you know I was thinking about becoming a gym leader? He asked suspiciously. Gym leader, I know everything skills, Brock said smugly. Glikes, Naruto said with a roll of his eyes. What are you two talking about back there? Misty called from up the front with Ash. Naruto waved at her. Oh, don't let us bother you from your lover's chat, he said cheekily. The two blushed deeply and began calling outrage. Naruto rolled his eyes to Brock. Thanks for telling me about the two of them. I'm really oblivious to that kind of stuff. Brock waved a hand at him lazily. No worries, Naruto. After all, what's the point of using Glikes if I don't use them? Ash was so proud. He had won 9 matches in a row now. He didn't include his battle with Naruto. For him, Naruto was like the god of awesome, and so he was just a master at everything and was feeling extremely confident. And now he was confidently strutting down the road to where are we going? Ash asked sheepishly. I wouldn't know, Ash. You are the one letting, and I have never been here before, Naruto said as he played with the sharp pointy knife in his hand. A kunai he had called it. Naruto threw it up and then caught it on the tip of his finger. He continued to repeat this several times. Ash battled with some kid, he hadn't really bothered to get the name, and he mentioned some AJ guy. Ha, I'll easily be able to defeat him, Ash declared. A healthy attitude, Naruto approved, only to be whacked on the head by Misty lightly. You're inflating his already over-large head, she complained. I know, isn't it great? Naruto said with a grin, clearly enjoying himself. His Eevee had decided to take place in a hexagon around him as a defense against wild Pokemon. Ash didn't know, but he doubted that the Eevee could do something against something like wild Pokemon. Naruto was probably just humoring them. Kurama lagged behind as per usual. Pikachu had taken to riding on the Ninetales' head. Naruto had mentioned something about them coming to an agreement about the wondrous art that both he and Naruto practiced. It appears that this gym is not licensed by the Pokemon League. Poor AJ, he gets no Glikes, Naruto said solemnly. So, are you my next challengers? Going to be my 99th win? A voice that had a heavy southern accent said. Wow, Naruto said and leaned in to look closer at AJ, who backpedaled in surprise. What did you to make your hair look like that? It's green and black at the same time, he said in surprise. Ignore him, Brock advised the freaked-out trainer. Why yeah, he said slowly. Ash had to admit his hair was pretty cool. But that wasn't going to help him win. I accept your challenge. You shall lose to me. Because I have 2 badges and you have none. And I've never lost, Ash declared happily. How did he know that? Misty wondered. Didn't he get defeated by Naruto in Naruto's first battle ever? Brock said in confusion. That doesn't count, Ash exclaimed, annoyed his friends were pointing out his faults and his perception skills. And besides, Naruto is like an awesome, unbeatable force of nature. Naruto grinned at this and his head grew 3 sizes. But you are not a superhuman, Ash cried as he pointed a finger at the stunned AJ. Fine, I'll battle you, AJ said irritably. But what do you feed that Ninetales? It is insanely healthy, as if had never had any disease in its life. Kurama puffed up happily and Naruto snorted. Kurama, I don't know what he feeds himself besides ramen. Ramen, AJ said curiously. Naruto's eyes were suddenly bawling anime tears. It makes me so sad that no one in the world knows the glory of ramen, he cried tearfully. I'll be happy to look into this ramen later, but for now, let's battle. One battle later where Ash's large head gets pushed down 10 sizes. I know what you mean about all those people who were so full of themselves because of badges. Naruto complained. Ash was crying in the corner. I know, right? It is how you train your Pokemon to not be pushovers. Your Eevee are all healthy, but they don't look as strong as your Ninetales. How long have you had the Ninetales? AJ asked, ignoring Ash completely, who was now trying to ask for a rematch. We were bonded at my birth, Naruto explained. Naturally, I have some powerful abilities because of it, he said with a sigh-like grin that made everyone shudder. Would you like to see my gym and training methods? Will I be able to get the recipe for this ramen off you? Naruto grinned and motioned for him to lead the way inside. The others followed. I like your style, Naruto approved as he watched Sandshrew dive into the water. It works well in training against the weakness to face the weakness head-on. Build up a resistance, Naruto explained, slipping into his lecture the newly made Chunin mode. It's cruel, Ash cried in protest. It's life, Naruto corrected. How many of those things that obviously aren't straight jackets do you have spare? He asked the tamer. Spare strength intensifiers. I think 100. I make them when I am not training, AJ said with a shrug. I'll swap you the ramen recipe for those strength intensifiers, Naruto offered. Deal, AJ said and clasped hands. They in the back, Naruto asked. AJ nodded and they went to trade. Kurama sighed and curled up in a ball. He opened one eye as he felt the familiar chakra signatures of Team Rocket. Sighing heavily and thinking he couldn't be bothered with this, the Kyuubi hanged himself to look like Sandshrew and Sandshrew into him. The real Sandshrew was currently next to Pika Brat, who looked like a strange yellow ball. He watched Team Rocket come in. The Ninetales and the Pikachu have been together a lot lately. We find one and we find the other, he heard the woman whisper. Ask one of the Pokemon Meowth. Hey you, Sandshrew, the Meowth said. What? Kurama said with a yawn. Have you seen a Pikachu anywhere? The great fox pointed a claw at the yellow ball. Thanks Sandshrew, the Meowth said with glee, and they bagged the two Pokemon. Perhaps I shouldn't have told them that, the Kyuubi murmured as he watched them disappear. Then he shrugged and poofed back to normal. Oh well. Sandshrew, Sandshrew, where are you Sandshrew? Called the voice of the human, who Kurama had to admit he liked his hair. Team Rocket came and stole him and the Pika Brat. Kurama offered his view on things. It wasn't like he had done anything wrong. Maybe they just wanted to talk to the Pika Brat. His excuse sounded lame even in his head. Did you just watch them go, Kurama? Naruto said in a disappointed voice. There was no way Kurama was going to answer that without sounding stupid. There was silence. Naruto's sweat dropped. You know, you're meant to stop a robber, not just watch him go. Pikachu's missing too, Ash wailed. I was going to say Sandshrew ran off because he doesn't like the training methods, but if Pikachu's gone too then it doesn't work. Let's go out and find them then, Misty suggested. Just then Sandshrew, Pikachu and an unconscious Meowth appeared in front of them. Found them, Naruto said cheerfully as he placed a sealing scroll in his pocket. Everyone's sweat dropped. Hey, that's Team Rocket's Meowth. Brock declared the obvious. And cue Team Rocket's motto, Naruto mumbled. Prepare for trouble. And make it double, to protect the world from devastation. To unite all people within our nation. To denounce the evil of truth and love. To extend our reach to the stars above. Jesse, James. Team Rocket blasting off at the speed of light. Be prepared to fight, fight, fight. There was silence. Where's Meowth? Jesse suddenly realized. Here, Naruto said and nudged the unconscious cat with his foot. Whatever the two other Pokemon had done to it had knocked it out cold. The two thieves, who were standing at the front of the tent gym looking impressive, blinked. Then James pointed a finger at Meowth. He was a spy in our ranks for one of them. Now he has finally shown his true colors. Meowth jumped up, suddenly awake, and pointed at them. How dare you think I am the traitor? Meowth. Naruto blinked. You know, I only just realized. You talk, he said matter-of-factly. Yeah, Meowth said, not seeing where this was going. How do you talk the human language? Meowth blinked. I listened and learned, he stated bluntly. Naruto scowled at Kurama. And why don't you know how to speak, huh? If I learned how to speak, I would have to deal with the human brats, so no thank you, Kurama stated matter-of-factly. We didn't mean to take that annoying, worthless Sandshrew, James continued as Meowth joined their ranks, their previous argument already forgotten. Worthless Sandshrew, AJ called out in outrage. And the only annoying one here is Naruto. Hey, Naruto complained. Everyone called him annoying no matter what world he was in. I'll show you how worthy my Sandshrew is, AJ yelled. And that was how Kurama witnessed the unbeatable AJ's 100th win. Could Kurama be bothered to defeat him and stop him from going on a journey? Nah, Kurama said with a groan as he got to his feet and shook his fur. Naruto yawned loudly as Ash led them to Vermilion City. Naruto, who had quite a good sense of direction because he was a ninja, knew that Vermilion was actually in the complete opposite direction. He did need to train the kits sometime soon, but he didn't have any weights for the training he was going to do. Naruto stopped and pulled out his sealing scrolls. The strength intensifiers, Naruto said, and a grin split his face. Excellent, but I will need to spend a couple of days somewhere, training them. Talking to yourself again, Naruto, Brock said as they walked through the never-ending mist. Yup, Naruto said cheerfully. I was thinking aloud how I am going to have to ditch you guys for a couple of days to do some special training. Ah, why do you have to ditch me, Naruto? Ash whined. Naruto ruffled his hair. Quite simple really. I need to train my kits to be able to protect themselves, and to do that I need to take some days away from you. We'll meet in, let's say, Vermilion. Will Kurama be going with you? Brock asked. Kurama snorted and shook his head. You'll drag me into training if I go. I might as well have a vacation with the brats and a break for your kits, the Kyuubi said with a huff. Unca Fuzzy, the kits whined. The great fox wilted slightly and refused to look at the E-gang. No, that's final. The Ninetales then promptly plugged his ears with some red ear muffs he had conjured out of nowhere. Well, we can always prank him when we meet up again, Naruto said with a grin. He waved to the trio of humans and their yellow Pika pal. See you soon, he called, and him and his Eevee gang swiveled around and walked in the opposite direction into Vermilion City. Welcome to training, Naruto said with a grin at his 6 little toddlers. This may seem a little like hell, but I love you all, so remember that is why you are going through this torture. Firstly, put on these strength intensifiers. Once they had all been equipped, there were 6 furry balls surrounding the Hokage. Naruto laughed as they struggled to free themselves to no avail. Carefully he placed a bowl of ramen 50 meters away. The kits could still smell it though, and their struggling became more prominent. Naruto grinned. It was 50 minutes later when the first Eevee had finally made it to the ramen. Of course it was Sasuke. He had to be first in everything after all. Next was Kakashi, and then Sakura as she shoved her way to the front to be next to the brooding Sasuke. Then Lee came, followed closely by the bluish fox, and finally a hungry and lazy Shikamaru managed to make his way over. Naruto smiled a sigh-like smile, and the 6 shuddered. They would learn to fear that smile soon. Very soon. The technique was very simple. It would build up the kit's chakra reserves, so when it came to tree climbing, they would ace it. He would tap the seal he had placed on the strength intensifiers so that the seal would add a kilogram to the restrictions. Weight seals were so much fun. Then he would repeat the exercise and place the ramen 50 meters away. The kits realized that if you got to the ramen first, you would be allowed 2 bowls instead of just 1. So they began to fight harder for the glorious prize of ramen. Naruto placed a clone to watch over them, and he wandered down the road to Vermilion City. He wondered what would happen in the few days away from Ash and the others. He was sure with his luck, it would be some sort of adventure. In Vermilion City was where he felt something he had not felt in a long time. Chakra. The Pokemon world did have chakra, but it was buried very deep within everyone, as the people had instead fallen for technology and Pokemon instead of chakra to protect and heal them. Pokemon did have chakra, yes, but had he not introduced his kits to chakra, he doubted they would have found it. They had set moves, or attacks, that could not be changed. Demonic Lightning was not a Pokemon move, but a mix between both those two energies, the one used for attacks and the chakra. So when Naruto felt chakra, he headed directly to it. He was greeted by the sight of that stunned him. A small girl that reminded him of the stories he had heard about Yuki Onna was sitting in front of a restaurant in a pure white kimono knitting with Senbon needles. He could tell she had a henge on and could feel Pokemon energy inside of her. As soon as he was about to ask why a Pokemon was under a henge to be a human, a Gyarados suddenly appeared from inside the restaurant. How Naruto had not noticed the Gyarados was a good question. He was also wondering why the Gyarados was out of the water in the first place. Then he spotted the butcher knife in its tail. The Gyarados spotted his stunned look and mistook it for fear. He growled, "Oh yes, Another human scared to death by the terrifying demon of the Vermilion's misty harbor, the Gyarados said in disgust. Naruto was staring at the knife in his tail. What? The Gyarados said as it waved the knife around in a seemingly threatening way. I just like to cook, okay? I own a strictly vegetarian restaurant, thank you very much. But it's not like you will understand me anyways. Geez, I seriously think that humans are so thick all the time. And this one seems particularly annoying staring at me like that. Hey, Naruto cried outrage. He did not want to be called annoying again. He was getting sick of it. I am not annoying. The Gyarados leaned in closely, which Naruto knew would freak anyone out, but he said nothing and then nudged him with the back of his butcher knife. You speak the Pokemon language? Gyarados said curiously. Understanding and speaking are different things, Naruto mumbled. What did you come here for, human? I have a feeling you are not here for me to cook for you, the Gyarados said with slight annoyance. I was wondering why a Pokemon was under a disguise, Naruto decided to say instead. Well, I can't cook food for people like this, can I? The Gyarados pointed it out. You probably would lose a lot of customers, yes, Naruto agreed. But why aren't you wearing it now? Gyarados frowned, as much as a Gyarados could. I couldn't sense you at all. I can sense everyone else, but I couldn't sense you at all. I can hear a Rattata's heartbeat, but I can't hear you at all. It is curious, the Gyarados murmured and leaned closer. Personal space. Naruto coughed and stepped away slightly. Okay, I understand where you are coming from, but what about Miss Yuki Onna there? I do not wish to be separated from Momochi-sama, the girl said reverently. Momochi-sama, Naruto said weakly. Something wrong with that name, human. The Gyarados growled. This Pokemon world really seemed to like to play with Naruto's head. He was now in the presence of one Gyarados who owned an oversized butcher knife which he apparently used for his vegetarian restaurant. And was known as the Demon of Vermilion's Misty Harbor. No doubt Yuki Onna was most definitely Yuki Haku reincarnated and as a girl this time. Yuki Onna, Momochi, would you like to come back to my camp? The two eyed him suspiciously. Won't the humans at your camp try to catch us or kill me? Momochi said warily. He didn't want Yuki Onna caught in this. They had practiced with the strange power they had found within themselves to protect themselves, but something told Momochi that he would not be able to do anything against this powerful human. No humans at my camp, Naruto assured him. Just make sure you put your hen disguise back on before we leave. I don't want the town on us. The Gyarados eyed him once more before nodding slightly. Then, with a poof of smoke, Naruto was facing a blue-haired man with sharp pointed teeth. The man seriously looked like Zabuza with his bandages off. And he had a shirt on. He heaved the butcher knife over his shoulder and they began to walk back to Naruto's camp. The kits didn't seem to mind the two new additions at all. Momochi and Yuki had been very wary at first, but after meeting the kits well, Yuki had become somewhat of the kid's cousin while Momochi became another uncle. Naruto had offered to catch them, but they had both confessed they weren't quite ready for that yet and would just like to stick around a little longer and decide. Naruto was talking inside the Pokemon Center with Momochi when two people ran in, clutching their Pokemon to their chests, looking worried. Nurse Joy. One of the Nurse Joys, the cousin to the one he'd first met, apparently looked up and gasped. Oh dear. She fretted as her Chansey wheeled the two fainted Pokemon away on stretchers. What happened? Naruto asked, concerned. It was the Squirtle Squad. The younger of the two trainers said. Where's this Squirtle Squad? Naruto said as he got to his feet. Daffodil Town, the elder replied. It's northeast of here. The path's really hard to find though. That's why most people get lost between here and there. We can show you if you like, the younger trainer said quietly. After they had been showed the path, Naruto, the Eevees and the two newest members of the family began to make their way to Daffodil. It didn't take very long at the speed that Naruto pushed them, and when they arrived, Naruto had to forcibly stop the others from falling into a hidden hole. Why are we coming after this Squirtle gang anyway? Momochi puffed. The disguised Gyarados would never admit it, but the pace Namikaze had put up had left him barely able to keep up. Not to mention that he was hauling Kubikiri on his back. The knife was heavy. Because, Naruto said as he led them around the trap, the kits need to do some more training. Said kits looked ready to cry at that statement. So what are you going to do? Battle them? Mamachi said doubtfully. Naruto looked offended. Who do you think I am? No, my dear little children are going to give them a taste of their own medicine. The Eevees perked up. Quank dem, Sasuke said excitedly. Naruto grinned and nodded his head. The Squirtle Squad was furious and beyond bewildered. They as in them, the freaking Squirtle Squad, were being pranked. Now at first, their leader, A, had thought that his brothers were just having another argument. These were usually dealt with by them having a prank battle. However, this had been proven not once. He had held a meeting and found that they were being pranked by an outside force. And so the prank war had begun. Sir, trap in the beta quarter has been activated. C informed as he appeared in the tree. A looked up from several strategies, his glasses glinting. Capture them, he said mercilessly. C nodded and he took off. A put down his plans. These kits, as they had proclaimed themselves as, they were good. But the Squirtle Squad was better. Kurama was honestly a bit annoyed when they'd fallen down a hole into a pit. At first he thought it was Naruto's doing until he realized the hole wasn't orange. Naruto would always paint something orange. Perhaps a Team Rocket hole. Kurama wondered. This was proven false as 5 Squirtle heads appeared and began laughing hysterically at them. Wait, are those sunglasses? Kurama said incredulously. The leader, who had a unique pair of said sunglasses, smirked down at him imperiously. The Ninetales bared his teeth slightly before turning to see if the others were all right. The human brats appeared to be fine, thought the Gaki with the very small eyes appeared to have a large bump appearing on his head. As they scrambled out, Kurama stared coolly at the turtles. Are you the owner of this trap? He growled quietly. The leader stared at him with a look that Kurama couldn't quite place, but he knew that it was familiar somehow. He was different from the other turtles, but only slightly. His blue skin was leaning to a midnight blue shade and his shell was a very pale cream color on the underbelly. The back was a very rich brown. Yes, the Squirtle said, and Kurama could feel the glare through the glasses. And are you and your companions known perhaps as the Kits? The Squirtle said gruffly. Kurama inwardly groaned at the thought that the Kits were here. So much for a vacation. No. The leader surveyed them. I suppose you and your human scum can go, the Squirtle said, beginning to turn. However, Pikachu, who had been helping his brat get out of the hole, growled loudly. How dare you insult Ash like that? Pikachu seethed, cheeks prickling with lightning. And then, before Kurama could stop him, he shot an attack at the leader. Then, another Squirtle dived to take it and a few moments later, with a quiet threat to get back at them for this, they disappeared. Huh, Kurama thought, cracking his neck. That was weird. C healed Jwala paced quickly, growling under his breath. We do not need another of the human scum in our lands, A said, brow furrowed in thought. Especially with these Kits. We are getting closer, being able to see their shadows now. Unfortunately, those shadows were still too fast for them to identify the owner with. Kenny, A said, turning to Jay's partner. Kenny looked up. Deal with those humans and the Pikachu brat. Suddenly, a Meowth stumbled through the bush with 2 humans. They all tensed, ready for battle, before the Meowth grinned. Ah friends, I have a business proposal for you, the Meowth said eagerly, licking its lips and rubbing its paws together. I hear you are having trouble with the Kits. Luckily enough for you I have been following them for some time. I just have one thing for a trade, A smiled. I'm listening. Naruto was sipping a soda as his Kits lapped at a bowl of water each. Mamachi and Yuki were drinking some Pokemon protein drinks which caused several people to look at them weirdly if they weren't already weirded out by the 6 Eevees that surrounded them. Northeast. Go pee way now mama. Kakashi asked as he looked up at him pleadingly, ears drooping slightly. Naruto sighed heavily. Okay, the Rokudaime said slowly. But only if you promise to wreak havoc. The Eevees quickly rushed outside, chattering to themselves excitedly. And don't forget to look both ways before crossing the road. Naruto called out after them. The chance of them being run over in this town is almost nil, Mamachi pointed out dryly as he wiped his face with his arm, Yuki at his side sighing contently as she finished her drink. Daffodil Town only has Officer Jenny on her bike, but other than that there isn't anything. Well, what if a Pokemon became a wheel and ran over them? Naruto pointed out. Mamachi scoffed. Yeah, right. Next you'll be telling me it will be Little Blue Elephant that all the girls will coo over. Naruto glared at him brutally and muttered he'd won this one. You know, I saw something strange today, Yuki said slowly. A Meowth was speaking English. I didn't know anyone else possessed the ability. Huh, Naruto said as he sipped his soda. Then he spat it out. Wait. Team Rocket. Naruto wouldn't have been worried normally, but the kits had taken to wearing strength intensifiers at all times until Naruto knew they were strong enough for proper weights. With those on they were, dare he say it, normal Pokemon. Let's go find them, Naruto said as he got to his feet and rushed off. Yuki turned to Momochi. What is Team Rocket? Momochi shrugged his shoulder helplessly and sipped his protein drink. Kurama opened his eyes groggily. He had been knocked out by getting repeatedly hit in the head several times with a metal pipe. He was never going to underestimate that redhead woman again. Now he knew how Naruto felt after being pummeled by Sakura, the human, though the Eevee had a mean bite. He found himself in a large cage, with Pikachu crushed up next to him. The yellow rodent was breathing shallowly and he was concerned despite himself. The Kyuubi gently bumped the small Pokemon with its nose. It coughed weakly. Kurama looked up and cursed lightly as he bumped his head on the top of the cage. Shaking his head, he spotted the two human brats tied to a rock. Wait, wasn't there three? The short annoying one. He glanced around then back at Pikachu concernedly. One of the humans coughed and he looked up to see the male looking at him, a reassuring smile on his face. Don't worry, Ash is getting Pikachu a potion. Kurama snorted softly. I wasn't worried, he lied, turning his head away, but keeping Pikachu in his eye. Brock stared at him before cocking his head to the side. So you can understand everything we say, right? Kurama stared at him dully before nodding head slowly. Brock went starry-eyed and Kurama recoiled quickly at the strange look. You could teach all my Pokemon to speak, couldn't you? Naruto said you could if you wanted to. Even if I could, I wouldn't, Kurama shot back. I wouldn't be that cruel to the Pokemon. Just then, 6 blurs came in. Unca Fuzzy. Kurama perked up. Kits, he said. They looked at him curiously. Why you in a cage, Unca Fuzzy? Sakura asked curiously. Kurama blinked. Why was he still in here? He looked at Pikachu. Yes, he didn't want to accidentally hurt the yellow rat. That was it. The kits, however, were paying too much attention to him and they soon ended up in next to him, making the occupants of cage very uncomfortable with no space to even twitch in. Kurama groaned. So much for a vacation. It appeared that Team Rocket and the Squirtle Squad had teamed up for his and the kits' capture. The kits versed the squad in an all-out prank war which left them black, blue and purple all over, from paint of course. The kits won. Kurama wasn't surprised and the squad admitted that they weren't really prank masters. The leader, so that is who he reminds me of, Kurama thought smugly, wasn't really into pranks in the first place. He wanted to go find his brother, who had gone out exploring with his trainer. Apparently Ash reminded of this trainer and so he wanted to join Ash in his journey. Ash, who had returned with a ruffled Naruto they had gotten into a tussle with Team Rocket on the way, it appeared, had arrived in time to hear that. All in all, Kurama thought, that had ended pretty well. The only thing was that the squad had no purpose. Next week Jenny contacted them and told them of Daffodil's new firefighters. Thanks.